Hey, it's James Robbins here, and I want to let you know the absolute worst thing you can do as a boss, because you don't want to do this, because doing this absolutely destroys motivation and morale in your workplace, and it's one of the quickest ways to lose your staff. So what is it? Well, I'll get to that in a moment. But you know, when I am doing live workshops, I used to do this exercise where I would get people to write down the boss from hell. In other words, I would get people to say, you know, who's the worst boss you've ever had in your life? And hopefully it's not the boss you currently have, but you know, who was it? Actually, I didn't care who it was, but I would tell them to write a list of why were they the worst boss? Like, what was it that they did or didn't do that made you put them on the list? And so people would write all these things down. Then I would get them in their tables like, okay, let's compare notes. Compare notes with the other, you know, people who've had bosses from hell. And it was like a super lively discussion. I think it was partly cathartic as well. People like getting this off their chest. Right? But anyways, what I would bring the whole group back together, whether it was 50 people, 100 people, and I would start to put the things on the board. Like, who are these people, these bosses from hell? What is it that they do? And you know what? A certain set of things began to emerge. Every time I did this, didn't matter what city I was in, what country I was in, it was always the same. And you know, one of the things that was always on the list, actually near the top of the list, micromanaging. When a boss micromanages their staff, people absolutely hate it. Now, why did people hate it? Because micromanagement intrudes on one of our most core drives, and that's our need for autonomy, our need for freedom, our need to be self-directed, right? So all of us have this. All of us have this need to, like, I want to be self-directed. I want to figure this out for myself. I want to do this. And what happens when a boss micromanages us is it takes away that self-direction. And when we lose our self-direction, we actually lose intrinsic sources of motivation. Because what happens is now our boss is telling us, this is how you need to do it. You need to do it exactly this way. We don't need to think anymore. So we don't need to engage our brain. We don't even need to feel anymore. We just need to become a robot. That's what micromanaging does. It turns people into robots. Okay, fine. I'll just do what you tell me to do, right? And as soon as employees are in that mode, you've lost them. And so don't do that. Now, here's the challenge. When you survey the entire planet and you ask all the managers, however many millions there are, and you say, are you a micromanager? Guess what? Nobody is. So what does that tell us? That tells us we all could potentially have a blind spot for micromanaging. So how do we make sure that we mitigate against that? Well, we want to make sure that we are constantly exercising autonomy for our employees. And now there's several different ways to do that, but let me give you just one, a really simple one. And that is to invite people in to help you make decisions or to get their input. It's a really simple way to help employees feel more like they have more control over their environment, that they can also influence things more than just their little role. Think about this. You've got to make decisions all the time. Right? You got to make decisions all the time. So why not bring them in on some of the decisions? And you want their input. You value that. So go to them from time to time to say, hey, I want to ask you what you think about this. Or you might be going to a meeting with your bosses, and you can say to one of your staff, like, hey, I've got this meeting with my boss. Here's what I'm thinking of saying to them, but what do you think about that? And that's a big deal for somebody. Like, wow, you trust me enough to ask you, and my opinion counts around here. That's a subtle way to help people experience autonomy. Of course, there's other ways as well, like giving people choice with how they do their job and you know, many other different things. But we want to make sure that we are not a micromanager and not even realize that we are. And so to help protect us and our people from that, let's make sure that we're helping them exercise their autonomy, because autonomy is one of the strongest drivers to get people motivated and find and tap into that intrinsic motivation. Now, in fact, autonomy is just one of the 9 engagement drivers. If you've never heard of the engagement drivers are like emotional needs that when they are met at work, they act sort of like these little shots of motivation. And when you as a manager learn how to tap into all 9 of these drivers, you're going to see a massive difference in the motivation, the morale, and the engagement of your staff. And if you'd like to learn more about these 9 engagement drivers and how you can put them into practice in your leadership, then I've made you a free training. And you can find that right below this video. There's a link in the description section. Just go ahead and click on that link. You'll be able to register and you'll be able to get access to that training right away. And then when you start, like I said, leveraging those engagement drivers, one of which includes autonomy, you're going to see a massive difference in the motivation of your staff.